What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the series on my channel called Watching Every Best Picture Winner. This is the segment on my channel where I go through and discuss every movie that has won Best Picture since the creation of the Oscars, and I spin a random wheel and I watch whatever movie that it lands on from whatever year. And as you can see on the screen, I'm playing the recording of the wheel that I spun at the end of last episode, which I know it's been a little while since I've released one of these. I've been getting caught up on a lot of new release movies. But the wheel landed on A Beautiful Mind. And A Beautiful Mind, this is really interesting for me because this is a movie that I've seen probably 3 or 4 times. I think the first time I watched this was around my middle school years, and I watched it a couple more times in high school and in my early 20s, but it's been well over 10 to 12 years since I've watched the movie. And, since I've become very analytical with film, I haven't gotten around to seeing it. And so this just felt, I remembered bits and pieces of the movie as I was watching it, but I didn't remember it entirely. And obviously, I knew what was going to happen, which when I discuss this movie, if you've never seen it before, it's impossible to talk about this movie without talking about like what the big spoiler of the film is. So this movie came out a while ago. I'm going to be very open with my discussion on what happened. So if you've never seen it and want to watch it blind, you can come back and watch my review later. But just giving you the heads up there. And the movie I want to be discussing with you today is A Beautiful Mind. And as always in these Watching Every Best Picture videos, at the end of this video, I will spin the wheel and tell you guys what movie I'm going to be watching for the next episode in case you want to follow along and watch these movies with me. A Beautiful Mind is directed by Ron Howard. From the heights of notoriety to the depths of depravity, John Forbes Nash Jr. experiences it all. As a brilliant but socially awkward mathematician, he made a groundbreaking discovery early in his career and stands on the brink of international acclaim. But as the handsome and arrogant Nash accepts secret work in cryptography, he becomes entangled in a mysterious conspiracy. His life takes a nightmarish turn, and he soon finds himself on a painful and harrowing journey of self-discovery. So, like I said, this is one of the Best Picture winners that I've seen multiple times. I watched it, I think, in some kind of class in middle school, and then watched it a couple more times in high school, and I really enjoyed it when I was a kid and when I was growing up. And I watched it again in my early 20s and still appreciated it. And what I will say is, I still really liked it this time around. I don't think I liked it as much as I did when I was a kid. I think now it's a lot easier to pick up some of the glaring flaws with the movie and the way that I feel like the runtime could have been utilized a little bit better to showcase elements of Nash's life that would bring a little bit more satisfaction to the film. But I do still think it's very beautifully moving. I think there's some incredibly great dramatic moments in this, and I also think that the performances are really what make the film shine. And I'm going to discuss the movie with you a little bit today. So this movie takes place over a long period of time throughout our lead character, John Nash's life. John Nash, played by Russell Crowe. We see him early on in the film going to college. He has no interest in going to classes. He doesn't really want to take part in those. He wants to discover something in the mathematical world that could help make significant strides for society. He wants it to be a unique discovery. He doesn't want it to be something that someone else has already done and just kind of shift or change. He wants it to be his own unique thing. And we meet the group of mathematicians at the school who are all kind of seemingly on the same path, not as driven as Nash is to do something unique, but they're all trying to make strides in their own significant field. We're introduced to his roommate, Charles Herman, played by Paul Bettany, who's constantly drunk and out doing just random things. He seems to be doing everything but actually go to class. The two of them form a really close relationship, and through the beginning of the film, we find out Nash eventually makes this discovery, which gives him the opportunity to go anywhere in the world that he wants to do more work on his discovery. And so he manages to do so, and when he moves to his new location with a couple of the friends that he's made in the school that he was working at before, he has to teach a class. It's required by the school, and in one of his classes, he meets Alicia, played by Jennifer Connelly, and the two of them start to form a relationship. They eventually get married as the movie goes on, and one day, John is invited to go to the CIA headquarters to help the United States government with something. He doesn't know what it is. He just knows that he decodes these numbers, gives them this information, and they say, "Thank you, we really appreciate you helping." But one day, he's out at the school, and he's approached by William Parcher, played by Ed Harris, who says that the government is grateful for the work that he did while he was there, and that there has been codes placed in like newspapers and different pieces of media sent by the Russian government, and that they want him to decode upload these things and send them in confidential packages back to the United States government by dropping them in this mailbox. And so he starts to do this work to the point where it's essentially driving him crazy. It's like bleeding into his regular life. And as we learn in the movie, John Nash is schizophrenic, and his roommate was not a real person. William Parcher is not a real person. And as we learn about his schizophrenia, the film just kind of looks how that impacts his life and the relationship that he has with his wife. So like I said, I really enjoy this movie. I don't think it's as good as I thought it was when I was younger, but I still really appreciate a lot about it. Really what makes this movie so incredibly special is the performances. I would argue this is probably Russell Crowe's best performance in his career. I feel like he really lives and breathes this character in a way that it's easy to watch him and enjoy while he's on screen. Some of the dialogue that he delivers isn't necessarily the greatest. I don't necessarily think that's the fault of him as an actor. I think that it's the screenplay not being as sound as it possibly could be. But I still think that he's really great. And in the very intense emotional moments that the film provides, he brings a lot to the table. He really is one of the reasons why the movie is so easily watchable. And I very much appreciated his performance and think that he's incredibly talented and enjoyed any time he was on screen. Another part of this movie I really liked was Jennifer Connelly. I think her chemistry with Russell Crowe is great, and one of the reasons why the movie works so well. She also has some very harrowing emotional moments that I think work to the film's advantage. I think both Paul Bettany and Ed Harris both do an amazing job as well, being these figments of his imagination, and I think the way they kind of toy with him is interesting in the concept of what schizophrenia is and how it impacts people. I really liked that. And then another character that is kind of shown to him in his schizophrenic headspace is this little girl. And I just thought that it was so interesting to think about how that illness can affect a person and the way that it will manipulate their brain. And it's just all the performances in this movie are really exceptional. And it's one of the reasons why the movie is so interesting to watch. I also think it's pretty well shot for the most part. There's some interesting editing, definitely some things that I would say dated to the early 2000s that probably wouldn't necessarily work in a movie now. But I think for this time period, it definitely does. And I think it captures the setting and environment really well. It's very bleak looking, very muted color palette. Because the movie is incredibly depressing, I think that it works and kind of complements that feeling. And then another part of the movie that I think is really what makes it so great is the score. I thought the score to this film is incredibly beautiful. I think that it shifts perfectly when the tone of the movie shifts to really accompany that in a way that helps you emotionally feel everything what's going on. It doesn't necessarily manipulate you, it just helps accentuate what you're viewing on screen, which is the most important thing that music in a movie can possibly do. And I think, what this movie does really well is showcase when someone gets an illness like this that's so incredibly difficult to deal with and that makes people's lives so hard, the sacrifices that have to be made by family and the people around them in order to try to help this person live a normal life. Like, he's a father with a child and he's married to this woman, and there's some harrowing things that happen in this movie. And I know this is based on true events and on a real person, and I can just imagine how difficult it would be to live a life where someone is struggling through that, especially a person who's so incredibly intelligent. It would get very frustrating to be like, okay, you're smart enough to come up with all these things, but why can't you comprehend that the things you're seeing aren't real? But it's no fault to that person. It's the way their brain is wired. And I think that it's a very complex idea whenever you're discussing illnesses of this magnitude. But I think the movie introduces some really interesting conversations surrounding that let you think about it in a way that's very poignant and that's really moving. And like I said, there's a lot of beautiful emotional moments in this that really help keep you as a viewer invested. Do you think the runtime is not utilized to the best of its ability? I think the movie could do a little bit more of a focus on what Nash is actually working to accomplish, learn a little bit more about his field. I feel like that's kind of pushed to the back burner. And even the relationship with his wife, I really wanted more from Jennifer Connelly's character and a little bit more about like her struggle and the things that she's dealing with. We get it in like little bits and pieces and fragments, but I think character building in this movie, even with Nash's character, I feel like because the time period jumps are very drastic, you don't necessarily get to sit with these characters in a way that lets the emotion resonate for the entire 2 hour runtime. And that's a little bit difficult as well. And even the way some of the things with his illness are handled, I feel like they could have lingered on it a little bit longer to give the audience a bit more understanding of how it all works. And because it's a 2 hour movie, you'd think that there was enough time there to do all of these things, but there's a lot of needless exposition that I don't think needed to be there, that they could have filled with a little bit more character building and an idea of who these people are, rather than just brief snapshots of who they are. And that's really my biggest issue with this, is I feel like the runtime could have been utilized a lot better than it actually was. But aside from that, I still enjoyed the experience of watching this movie. I think that it's very well made. It's by no means one of the best films nominated for Best Picture that I've watched so far, but it's still a worthwhile watch if it's interesting, if the subject matter sounds interesting to you. Have you seen A Beautiful Mind? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really good. It's not as great as I remember it being, but I still think there's enough strong moments here to make it worth your time. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for, like this video. And as I say in every single one of these, I'm going to pull up the wheel here on my phone, and we are going to figure out which movie we are going to be watching the next time around. So let me get my wheel pulled up and get it up on the screen here for you. And we've got the wheel put up. It is spinning now on screen, and we are going to find out which movie we are going to be watching. It's been very interesting to see, because we've jumped kind of year to year to year what's going to be picked, and it's slowing down now, and the film that we are going to be watching is Spotlight from 2015. I have never seen this movie before. It'll be my very first time ever watching it, and I look forward to discussing it with you in the next episode. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.